What is a FIRPTA and why is it needed? FIRPTA stands for Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act. And it's a form that has tax implications and different variables. A little complex, but we'll try to boil it down for the sake of simplicity. So every real estate transaction, a FIRPTA form is delivered to escrow and should be collected from the real estate agent, the seller's agent, and delivered to the buyer. Here's the reason. The buyer can get stuck with the seller's tax liability. So even though the seller may be subject to withholding taxes from their net proceeds, the buyer could get stuck with that tax bill if for some reason the seller doesn't make good on it. Now often, escrow is a withholding agent. So they take that money out of the seller's proceeds, they hold it, and they send it on behalf of the seller to the IRS or whomever needs it to make it simple for the seller. The problem is, if there's ever a mix-up, if there's ever an issue, and escrow doesn't do it properly or escrow forgets to do it, again, the buyer's on the hook for this tax bill, for the seller's tax bill, and that would make a buyer extremely upset. So what you do is you get a Form AS from the seller, and it needs to be completed, nothing blank on it. And if the seller's uncomfortable doing a Form AS, there's a Form QS that can also be done in place of the AS. So for Zipforms, there are two options. The AS, which should be the first choice, and if the AS isn't being completed by the seller because they may have privacy concerns, make sure the seller does a QS, and it must be delivered to the buyer. Why? That's your guarantee. That's safety for the buyer, so that if in the future escrow or the seller or someone along the line didn't make good on the withholding and the taxes due, the buyer can use that AS or that QS form to show that they acted in good faith, and that could relieve them from the liability of having to pay the tax bill on behalf of the seller.